YouTube, or even watching this recording at a later date. We're grateful you've decided to be with us, however, whenever, and wherever you are. So today I'm going to continue this idea of oneness and interconnectedness within, as, and through all of life. And it's the basic unity of all things. We say it, right, it's just a thing, but what does it actually mean? One with all that is. We like to be individuals, right? We like to be distinctive and noticed and all that stuff. But really, at the core of our being, we're one with all that is. How does that work? How can you be one and part of the many, or many in part of the one, all the time? Dr. Holmes, Science of Mind, page 112 and 113. The whole of spirit is potentially focused in our individual objective consciousness, but we have not yet evolved to a realization of this, except in slight degree. We approach and contact the larger spirit through our own spirit or conscious mind. This next sentence is in italics, like it was kind of important. The doorway to the absolute stands open at the center of our intuitive perception. The spirit which animates us is the same spirit which animates all life. Emerson said, "We animate what we see and see what we animate." Only as we can truly see the divine harmony be reflected through us and animate that which is seen, the spirit of humanity is equipped with decision, will, choice, volition, intellect, and purpose. It's the microcosm in the macrocosm. We are, even though there's no big or little, right? We are each our own individual expression of this divine self as us. So, how many of you are like fractals or like holograms? What's going on with that? If you think about what a fractal is or what a hologram is, every single piece has all of the components of the whole in it, and in a little tiny form. And each one of us has as much of that God consciousness as we can comprehend in us. And in that awareness of, I'm as much God as I can imagine, that's true for all beings. So if you look at a fractal, if you look at a sunflower, you're looking at a fractal. If you look at a cactus or a yucca, you're looking at a fractal, and each component piece contains the whole to the extent that they're capable, to the extent that it's possible. In fact, I'll even go further than that. You know, if you think about it, the oak tree is in the acorn. Doesn't look like it, it's just an acorn. And yet, within each one of us is as much of that divine consciousness as we can hold. And it's true for everyone. 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 Whether we like them or not. Whether they're our friends or not so much, right? Everyone has as much of that divinity as they can hold. And so in one way, this is the one in many game, right? There's only one of us. We just have all these different expressions that show up as divinity in walking around on two legs, or four, or six, or eight, or however many we have, or crawling on our bellies like snakes. So, back to Dr. Holmes. On page 113, further down the page, we should think of our spirit as being some part of the universal spirit, and our minds as open to the divine influx. As any specific knowledge must come from the center of all knowledge, it follows that whenever and wherever the mind of the human is open to the divine influx, it will receive instruction directly from the center and source of all. Science, invention, art, literature, philosophy, and religion have one common center through experience, all knowledge is drawn. No exceptions. So whether you're looking at the entrepreneur or the inventor or the scientist or the person standing on the stage talking to a microphone or the person who's nice or mean to you, every bit of that is God in form. And that's true for us, whether we're having a good day or a bad day. We're still God informed to the extent we are capable of showing up as that. And we always are, whether we think of ourselves that way or not. Every single one of us always is living inside this cosmic consciousness, getting a hold of as much of it as we can comprehend, as much as we can receive, and interacting with all these other beings who are also living in this same cosmic consciousness. And every single one of us draw out of this supply of infinite possibility, infinite good, infinite availablezness. As we want, as we choose, as we decide. And there's always more enough to go around. So if we're holding an idea of not enoughness in our minds, you know how it works, right? If we're holding an idea of not enoughness, we're stuck because we've put limits on it. There is no limit except the one we decide exists. This is a great big huge idea, and it's one that's challenging to remember when we're staring at something that looks wrong or difficult or hard or bad or whatever. And everybody's been there, right? Oh, yeah. So here's one of my favorite ways to think about this interconnectedness of all of life. You've heard, and I've talked about it before, you know about Indra's net, right? Indra's net is an image or an idea or a metaphor that came out of the Antharva Veda. I could say it yesterday. Antharva Veda, roughly 1000 BC, that was part of the Hindu scriptures and important to several sects of Buddhism. It's used to express or indicate the connectedness of everything and also emptiness. So the net is this visualized net that covers everything from infinity to infinity in all directions. And it's a net, right? So every place the fibers of the net cross. You know what a net looks like, right? Where you've got all these intersections. Every single place where the net crosses, a jewel hangs down. Except they're not just boring jewels, they're faceted jewels. And every single faceted jewel reflects every single other faceted jewel. And each one of us is a faceted jewel on the net. And so whether we're reflecting friend or neutral or maybe not so much, that's what's going on with this interconnectedness of all of life. And we can't stop it. Even if we wanted to, we can't stop it. This is how we are part of that whole. So this is a good tool for me to remember when I'm staring at something that's not cooperating with what I think it ought to be. It's like, I'm a facet of the net, and so are they, and somehow we've gotten a little cloudy or fuzzy or something. And that's part of that connectedness of life. You've had this experience before, just like me, right? And to take it another way, You know the experience of when you're thinking about somebody and you expect them to call and the phone rings, or you get a text, or a snail mail letter, which meant they thought of you 2 weeks ago. Because time is a thing we made up for convenience, and there is only now, and there's a continuity of life, and each one of us is in it. So one of the really odd and really cool interdependencies that I count on is the awareness that the answer to any question that I have is actually already available to me. And I just have to open to see it. Anybody else know that one? If you think about it, you do too. One of the things that I said back in, I think it was Essential Earnest, but I'm not really sure. But we were talking about how to find references that were appropriate to the different passages we were studying. And I said, I learned a trick when I was in ministerial school, and that is if I hold the question in my mind and I pick up any book and I open it randomly, the answer will be on that page. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads. Because it's like, that can't possibly be true. And I said, well, it is for me because I believe it is. And as long as you believe that it isn't, well, it isn't. But once you allow the possibility that your intuition is connected, then it is. So every single one of us has this infinitely connected intuitive state. And we can get answers to our questions if we're open to receiving them. And the reason that works is because of that Indra's net thing. Every single one of us is connected to everybody else. There's nothing special you have to do to get it. Just be there and notice and be open to it. So last week in the Sunday service, I shared a meditation from Thich Nhat Hanh from his little book called How to Love. And I had several people ask me to speak it again because it's just particularly sweet. And you'll recognize this as a variation of the loving kindness meditation that most of us are somewhat familiar with. So here it is. Get still, be calm, mind your breath. Focus on being present and begin practicing this meditation on yourself. On yourself. Because until you are able to love yourself, you can't really give love and share love and be love in the world. The meditation goes like this. May I be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. May I be safe and free from injury. May I be free from anger, afflictions, fear, and anxiety. May I learn to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and love. May I be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in myself. May I learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in myself. May I know how to nourish the seeds of joy in myself every day. May I be able to live fresh, solid, and free. May I be free from attachment and aversion, but not be indifferent. So you practice with those ideas, and you sit with those ideas until they become commonplace and present and part of your way of thinking and being in the world. And in that way, you can take care of yourself and love yourself And then the juicy bit, right? First, practice with somebody you like. Same steps, same meditation. Not somebody you love, somebody you like. Not somebody you have history with. Just somebody you're casually liking. And then somebody you're neutral with. And then somebody that you love, because then it lets you get over the stories. And then, finally, for somebody with whom the mere thought of them makes you suffer. So this is it's not something you can do in an afternoon. It's going to take a while. And after you practice this for a while, perhaps a long while, you may discover that you can think of them all beings, all facets hanging from that web, with compassion, with love, with peace, with joy, with harmony. Because really, there's only one of us, right? So if we see some facet of the net and we don't see them with that thing of love, who are we interfering with? Duh. Each one, each one, each one. Because there's only one. So last week, I asked those present in the theater and online to talk with each other about how we demonstrate to ourselves that we are one with all that is, or part of the divine nature. And when I got puzzled looks from a couple of people, like, what? I rephrased the question and asked those present to reflect on how they could be love in their world. And I appreciated Maria's prayer and the piece that she did earlier, because that's where she was. I am love. I am this expression of the divine as love. And so today, we're taking the next step. And I'm going to ask you to consider the possibility of how you can see those in your life through the eyes of love. Whether they're people, it's easy with people you like, right? Not so much sometimes. Or situations. Maybe you've got a gnarly situation going on in some way. How can you see that with that open, caring, intuitive, loving perception? And maybe it's somebody who doesn't listen well, or somebody who does stuff that's contrary to what you'd like them to do just because, or somebody who's consistently mean or cruel or difficult, or even somebody who acts out. We have these people in our lives, right? Every single one of them is a faceted jewel on the web. There's only one of us. Each one is a piece of the story. How do we perceive these people in our world as part of that same oneness that we're part of? So I think I'm going to stop my talking. It's not where I plan to do it, but whatever. And I'm going to ask you to pair up, maybe with somebody you talked to last week, maybe somebody different, and spend 5 minutes talking to your neighbor. And I'll ask Kylie to go back to the screen and ask those people online to join the conversation. How can you interact with people in your world that are maybe not so lovely? And remember to be love with them. So I'm going to stop talking. 5 minutes. Talk to each other. Thank you for being willing to have this conversation, because really, it's where the rubber meets the road. When we live as that one, And we remember that every single being we're interacting with lives as that one. That's when it's real. Remember, in the Declaration of Principles, Dr. Holmes wrote, "We believe in the individualization of the capital S spirit in us, and that all people, all beings, are individualizations of that same one spirit. There is no spot where God is not. All of life is God." So I want you to think about what you discovered in talking to your neighbor about how to remember that oneness, remember that connection, remember that sameness with people that are not necessarily same. Because that's an ability, that's a gift each one of us has that we can choose to use. So last Saturday, it seems like 100 years ago, Maria and I went to the organizational meeting of the Dare to Care Community Coalition about the difficulty that the gender nonconforming individuals have because they're not accepted. They're not seen as same. They're seen as odd, different, strange, whatever. And honestly, are they? No. Unique expressions, but not wrong, not different, not strange, not broken, not defective. And that's true for anybody that we run across that doesn't sit square in our heads. Right? This is a difference between us and some other folks that teach a different story. Whatever, right? We get to remember we're all the same because we're all divine in our nature. So I have one more story before I close, and that is in 2016, PBS published a documentary called Accidental Courtesy about a blues musician named Daryl Davis. And he was a successful blues musician, black, and he realized that he didn't believe the experience that he was having. That's an important piece of the story, right? He didn't believe it. Daryl's point of view was that he didn't believe people could hate him without knowing who he was, just because he was black. So he decided to sit down and have conversations one-on-one with, I used to know the title of them, but I forgot, the Grand Poobah of the KKK. And you know what? They discovered, Daryl knew it, but the other guy discovered that there was familiarity there. And over the years of Daryl persisting in talking and engaging and being present to these people who were set against him and people like him, they found that they were not that different. And the story goes something like, he started collecting the hats and the robes of the people who gave up their position in the case. And he's got this, 200 plus costumes. And some of the previous members of the KKK became anti-racist activists because they got it. Every single one of us has situations in our lives, people that we engage with that are problematic. And we have the opportunity to look at them with new eyes and see them with this new point of view of we're more alike than different. And like everything else, it's a practice. And we will fall down, and they will too, and it's a practice. So I want to close with two pieces. A short piece from Rumi that I'm particularly fond of, and then a very short piece that Dr. Holmes wrote in The Science of Mind. Rumi, today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are 100 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. And then the meditation from Dr. Holmes, Science of Mind, page 517. You'll hear in a minute why I love this one. I shall keep the promise I made to myself. I shall never again tell myself that I am poor, sick, weak, or unhappy. I shall not lie to myself anymore, but shall daily speak the truth to my inner soul, telling it that it is wonderful and marvelous. It is one with the great cause of all life, truth, power, and action. I shall whisper these things to my soul until it breaks forth into songs of joy with the realization of its limitless possibilities. No, we chose to be here at this time. No, we chose to engage in the individuals in our lives and be that presence of love for ourselves and for everyone else. And when you fall down, get up and try again. Because we will, right? We're all perfectly broken and perfect at the same time. Do that. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So now I'm going to roll into the affirmative prayer. So if I said anything that's useful to you that you want to remember, hold it in your mind just for a moment while I speak these words. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. I know in that oneness, in that interconnectivity of all life, I have a place. And so does each beloved who hears my voice. So does each beloved who doesn't hear my voice. Because there's only one. And that one is divine in nature, with a myriad of expressions, many facets on the jewel of the interconnected web of life. So I remember and celebrate and know the perfection of each one, of each expression. And I remember and know that I choose to look at life that way. That's what I see. God as love, as me, as everyone else. And as I choose and choose and choose to see all interactions that way, that becomes my experience. And I know, because there's only one of us, that everyone else receives benefit from my practice. And I know that these words are true for everyone else as they are for me. So from this space of interconnectedness, seeing the individualizations of God as each one, I imagine looking into the eyes of every person I contact, every person I think of, every person I imagine engaging with, and seeing them with God eyes, seeing them with love eyes, seeing them with peace and harmony and joy eyes, and knowing the perfect order that lies behind all this. Relaxing into the truth of these words, I let them be. And so it is.